And Mr. Goff, the discussion regarding consultants.
I put this in, and I figured it may take a little bit of time to gather, but as we move forward with the budget, what I would like to see is the number of consultants that we currently have on staff, what we're currently spending for consultants. I don't know, Mr. Park, you may know, do we have a separate budget item, line item for consultants, or is that just part of the general fund? It's under contractual services? Okay. And if there is any, funding sources that will be different from, general fund, just provide the funding sources for our, for any consultants that we have working with the district.
Mr. Park.
I did do just a very quick recap on this, and just to give you an idea, we've got 21 consultants that we paid $2,764,040, but of course those include some very large consultants, such as our architectural consultants, our building our building contractors, if you consider them to be consultants. It also includes legal consultants, so, and we do have, and then our alternative ed consultants. Of course, we're receiving a service for that. That's the alternative schools. So I think part of the question is, what do you define as a consultant? And we may need to get a little more clarification on that, because
well, according to our policy, it says that the board or the administration may enlist the services of consultants to provide specialized advice or assistance to the district. These services may concern educational, management, or administrative. Further states they'll have no authority over employees of the district. They will act only as advisors in the field which they offer assistance. The board will have final approval of all suggestions. So anybody that we're using in that manner whether it's a legal consultant, the consultant services that we use for the salary study, I think would factor into that. So non-employee personnel who are providing limited or short-term assistance to the district, in any funding sources, just how we're paying those.
All right, very good.
Okay.
How many permanent consultants do we have?
Well, we have a number of consultants. It's going to be difficult for me to actually answer that question, because just like Jumper Carter Cease has been engaged by the district as a permanent consultant, well, not permanent, but for our small projects, as well as the Wallace Elementary Middle School. So that's one example of a consultant that may have several years.
Ms. O'Nation.
Excuse me. In light of Mr. Goff's comment, I would be most interested in those consultants we have that are paid out of the general fund, or that would be my interest, not to exclude the others, but we know, for example, that our Jumper Carter Cease is being paid out of funds that have been allotted for Wallace. And we know the Infinity School amount, but I would be interested not only in that, but also in other costs that we're incurring for consultants that work for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything else you've got with that, Mr. Goff?
Not with that one. I have the other two items that we added.
All right. I'll skip me and we'll go on to the next one. Mr. Driggers, the early dismissal for next year.
Yes. Since there was some concern within the board here how we do things, I want you to rest assured that I am concerned. I want information on both items myself. So make sure everybody knows that. The public also knows that. I was concerned about the items, and I want to know. All right. And also, I did not shoot anybody in the back. I called Dr. Tillar and asked her, told her what I wanted, the information, so she would have the information for me when I got here tonight. Not like Mr. Parks, they're not knowing exactly how to answer those questions. So I just want to make that public. Okay, so my concern on the early release on Tuesdays, what I was concerned about, being a new board member, Dr. Tillar, first thing I want to know is how long have we been doing the early release on Tuesdays?
Mr. Driggers, this is our second year in implementation of the early release on Tuesdays, and we went to that because there's a lot of professional development that we must provide for faculty and staff, and if we're going to do it after school, then usually the staff expects to have or be paid a stipend that we do not have money to pay the stipends. The other thing is we went to that format because teachers are tired after they've taught all day. And so it was another way to get our professional development in during the day. And the way it's organized, we have only 2 days a month. So it's the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday of the month. One Tuesday is used for in-house meaning that they will have professional development at their respective schools. The second Tuesday that they're for professional development, that's the district day. So on the district day, you may see teachers leaving school and headed to a different location. For example, all math teachers may be meeting at one school for professional development. The fine arts teachers, oftentimes they will go to the high school to meet. So at times you'll see that movement because it's a second. One is devoted to the school professional development, and then one day is devoted to the actual district professional development, so teachers of like subject areas can come together. Like, for example, to receive professional development in the last year or so, we've had to work on the Common Core standards and providing professional development for our teachers in that area so they could move to the Common Core standards. This year, we received the TAP grant, and as part of the TAP grant, the teachers are required to meet in clusters and have certain meetings. It's required by the grant. So we also do those cluster meetings during those early release Tuesdays as well.
Do we have any results showing or documenting on how this has improved?
Yes, sir, we do. When you look at our state report card has moved to an average, and the year before it was below average and an excellent improvement rating, but this year we have an average in absolute and an average in improvement. So we feel that that professional development is helping us to move our students forward, because the one factor in making sure that children achieve is highly qualified and well-informed teachers. And so that's one area that we've really focused on, is to continue to provide that professional development that's needed.
I know on Tuesdays when you're doing this, you're shortening the classes that you have in place so all the classes can be attended, correct? Changing the time frame of those classes.
We do, but what we've done is we've included extra time in our schedule. So, in essence, the number of minutes of instruction that our students should receive, they still receive that, and they have to receive that by state law.
So they're still getting the same amount of instructional time, even though those classes are not being the length of time, because what you're doing
Yes,
is
sir.
shorting them back.
We are. For example, some schools in the past, we dismissed at 2:30. Now those schools may be dismissing at 3. Or if they were dismissing at 3, like for example in Blenheim and at the high school, we dismiss now at 3:30. So we've added extra time in the regular schedule that makes up for that time on those 2 Tuesdays when our kids leave at 1.
Okay, and on what you just spoke on there, the teachers leaving school, how do we monitor that? Because I'm going to tell you the truth, a lot of the parents and the students will say, the teacher beat me out the parking lot. So how do we monitor that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, sometimes the teachers are going to beat them out of the parking lot because we try to get them ahead of the buses, because oftentimes we have professionals to come in from the State Department to work with our teachers. We may have consultants that come from Winthrop or Francis Marion, the PD Center, and so we have to work around their schedules as well. So if they say to us that what they're going to present is going to take X number of hours and we need to start right at 1:30, then that's what we do. Now, when we have the professional development sessions, our teachers, they have sign-ins and they have agenda sheets. So in the principals and the curriculum department that handles the professional development, they keep a record of that.
So I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and if a teacher is not attending, then that teacher should have cleared that with their principal if they couldn't be there for some reason or another on that particular day.
So in your opinion, so far, to your knowledge, this has been a plus for the district, for the school?
Yes, sir, it has been.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and let's go on while you're taking your turn.
Okay, that's
to
fine.
the policy allowing superintendent to withhold information from the board.
On the wording of this policy allowing superintendent to withhold information, that's going to be twofold. First, I want to make sure, and I want to ask the question so the public and everyone else can understand what I'm saying, is withhold.
Let me ask you what policy number is.
That's what I'm getting ready to ask right now. Just let me do this, okay? We'll take care of it. The policy says it's allowing. That's what I'm getting ready to ask. Is there a policy that will allows you to withhold information from the board?
There's no policy regarding that. I think that when we look at this, we've got to look at it from the standpoint that the board has a role, and the board's role is that of a policy-making board, and the board is also responsible for hiring a superintendent and helping to set the vision for the district. The superintendent's role is to run the day-to-day operations. The procedures that we have in place, Mr. Driggers, when we have some type of emergency that occurs in the district, what we will do is, as soon as we've gotten that situation under control, or sometimes depending on what it is, we may send out an alert to the board as it's going on. And let me give you an example. Last year we had a fire at Blenheim, and as soon as we were called and contacted by the principal that there was a fire, en route to the fire, to the school, I was also on the phone calling back to Dr. Cobb, who's responsible for emergency preparedness, and having him to send out an alert now message to parents and to the board to let them know, 1, we had a fire, 2, it's under control, 3, all the children are safe, and the fire department was already on campus. So if there's some type of emergency of that nature, we will alert the board. But the day-to-day operations, just things that we deal with on a daily basis, we don't alert the board to everything. For example, we do random searches on a regular basis. And when we do those random searches with the police department and the sheriff's department, they may find a knife, they may find marijuana, they may find cigarettes or whatever. We don't alert the board to those type things, because once we take action on those items and it goes before the hearing board, then the parents of that child have a right to appeal to the board to hear that case if they're not comfortable with the outcome from the hearing board. So some of those type matters, we don't bring those things to the board, because if I brought them to you ahead of time, then it takes away the parent's right to come for an appeal. So if there's an emergency, weapons, or some type of fire, intruder in a building, if we have to do a lockdown, for example, sometimes the police department will call us and say, hey, we've got a criminal, somebody that we are trying to apprehend, they're in the area of such and such a school. So when that comes up, we'll lock that school down. When we lock it down, we'll send an alert out to the board via email to say we're locking it down.
We've kind of taken a track here off of I think what you were asking about.
I got it.
Okay.
What you're saying is, what I'm understanding from you is, no, you do not withhold any information from the board. Number two is you, as far as sharing information with the board, you selectively share the information depending upon the intensity or the need for, I guess, for legal or anything of this battle. That's when you start sharing stuff, when you determine how important it is. If it's a minor thing, you do not share. If it's a major thing, you do share.
Yes, and then on the other hand, let's just say an individual board member calls me and asks for information. Then if an individual member calls me, depending on how long it's going to take us to pull it, we'll pull it, but whenever I pull that information, we're going to send it to all board members at the same time. The other thing is, sometimes when we're asked for information, sometimes we're in the middle of a lot of things, and I can't pull the staff off of what we're working on at that time, because oftentimes we're working on time-sensitive things that we're trying to get done. And so usually when it's an individual item like that from an individual, I'll treat it like a Freedom of Information Act. So that usually gives us 15 days to do that.
Well, here's where I'm coming from with a lot of this information and what you're telling me. We're in a small community. A lot of the kids, parents, everybody else, they'll walk up and say, well, what do you think about this, and I'll sit there and say, I have no idea what you're speaking about. And that kind of bothers me a little bit, and I was just curious on how you shared it, how you determined how you shared it, and whether or not there was anything withheld. And I'll just go on record saying that, again, it's a small community, so a lot of times it may be the student comes home and says, the drug dog's there today, and Sally Sue got busted, and I'm sitting there and, well, what you going to say about it? I don't know what you're talking about. Well, that's all I'm saying is,
yes, sir,
that kind of information would be relative, if we could get some of that information, or I think, I don't know like the rest of the board does or not. This is what I'm talking about.
And I understand that, but when you run into those situations and they call you and they ask you what's going on with that, tell them, call the superintendent, she'll let you know. Because, again, we don't share when we're going to search and things of that nature, because when we share that, then we tip students off as well, and we may be tipping adults off as well. So usually when we're going to have a search, the principal will know and the police department. Most of the time, if I'm directing it, then I'm going to know. Other times they'll call me and tell me, but we usually don't announce that we're going to do a search.
Let me make sure you understand me. I'm not saying tell me when you're going to do the search. I like to know the results. That's what I would say. If it was something of interest to
and that's normally some of the things that we don't share, because again, we're talking about a student's individual record once we start. If I call and say, today we did a search at the high school and we found drugs on John Doe, so-and-so and so-and-so, and we're recommending them to the expulsion committee to hear that case. Now we've already taken away your judicial rights as a board, because if anything comes, if it goes any further, you can't hear it, because I've already given you too much information about it. Just like, for example, let's just say in some other areas would be, let's say a teacher. If a teacher comes to me and they have a grievance or a concern, most of the time the first thing I'm going to ask them, have you spoke with your principal? Because our policy says that first they have to grieve to their immediate supervisor, and then it goes up the line. But if they're grieved, they can't come straight to me. You follow me? They can tell me their concerns if it's not an official grief, if they're just coming in and they want to share something with me. But if they want to actually file a grievance, then that's different. I'll always ask them to make sure they're following the channels. So, one, we're never going to withhold information. Two, if there's anything that a board member wants to know, a board member always has the right to call me, and I can share. I will not share individual students of things of that nature.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that I'd like to make very clear is that, especially as we're starting the budget process, it is very important for us to be able to get financial information. For instance, how many permanent consultants we have, and I'm talking about consultants that are working in the school appearing to be like a regular employee, but they're labeled consultants, and what the ramifications are with that financially. And decision-making, information that we need to make informed decisions can at times be difficult to get. All right, Mr. Branch, outsourcing
if I can
jobs.
Just for the record, any information that the entire board needs to make decisions, I always provide it. And Ms. Tweed, you need to put that in the minutes, please, because I always provide it.
Mr. Branch,
Madam Chairman, just one moment before we go to that.
Ms.
I just want to mention that some of these problems could probably be resolved if we would get ahead of meetings when there's time and sufficient time for us to know what's on the agenda, the written information that we need, and we often get it in terms of what we have in the book, but we don't get everything. And sometimes some of us may feel that it would have been important to have that. Now, I recognize there are exceptions, but I think in general, for example, Mr. Park's presentation tonight could have been given to us ahead of time, and maybe we could have used the workshop to ask questions or do what we needed to do. A workshop would be some way for us to work through it. Now, I understand that at times that's not possible, but I think that we need to make it more possible, and it will help if we know what's on the agenda a little bit earlier. That will make it easier for everybody to get that information.
And I agree with you. And, for example, we have the senior staff has been instructed anything that we have on the agenda, that the information to go along with that item is in the packet. As far as the workshop is concerned, we didn't know, this is the first that I've heard, that maybe the board would like workshop information prior to the workshop.
And that, again, is not always possible, but on the financial side, it might have saved us some time when we're getting ready for the budget. That was, you know.
Well, I think the thought on that was the fact that we have several other workshops that are scheduled to cover the finance in the budget.
Ms. Bright?
I appreciate Mr. Parks and the administrative staff for the information that they provide. However, my main concern is with the items that the board members asked to be on the agenda. What I would like to see placed, if you have something that you want to put on the agenda and it's a policy, that you make copies of that policy or you send it out to the entire board so that we all can discuss what that policy says and decipher it. Because I may not interpret something the way you interpret.
That policy was done in October or November of 2011.
What policy?
The policy that...
I'm not talking about any specific thing.
Okay, all right.
I'm just,
okay, I thought you were asking about that.
No, I'm not talking about any specific thing. I'm just talking about anything that you want to put on the agenda. If everyone knows that it's there and we communicate, then we know how to go forth with that item. But if we don't, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know where you're coming from. Okay? So now you got everybody saying this, that, and the other. If everybody would agree, you know, if there's something concerning the policy, because that's what our job is. Our job is to govern policy, okay? That you would send it out to everyone, or either send the policy, look at policy BEDD. Just send it out to the rest of the board so we will be familiar with it when we come forth in our meetings.
All right.
Madam Chair, concerning what Mr. Drigger said about the information being given, I think as a board we also need to realize that when it comes to giving out information, dealing with certain issues, that we have to make sure that we govern ourselves by the HIPAA law also. There are certain things that cannot be shared, and I feel that Dr. Tillar will give us the information that can be shared. At the same time, there's a gray area of things that not could be shared because it could be violating the individual right. We need to take that into consideration also.
All right, outsourcing jobs, Mr. Branch.
Yeah, thank you. I contacted, I'd already talked with Dr. Tillar about this a couple weeks ago, and my question was about outsourcing of jobs, and she mentioned to me that, or my question to her was, did we outsource any jobs? And she mentioned that we outsourced some janitorial services at maybe one of our schools.
Not outsourced. We don't refer to it as outsourced because this is a practice that's been in place ever since I've been in the district. Mr. Park, could you tell me what were some of the other agencies that we have used? And what we do is we use different agencies for temp services. When we bring people in, when we need, we could need some workers in a certain area, and we can't wait until we go through the hiring process to get someone in, because certain things have to happen every day. For example, in food service, we always got to have a certain number of people there to run food service. The same thing with custodial service. And sometimes with facilities, we've had temps to come in and do electrical work. We've had temps to come in and, like for example, a couple of winters ago when we had a lot of our heating units breaking down, Mr. Devers couldn't cover all that by himself, and we only had one electrician. So we'll bring people in on a temporary basis to try to help us out.
Well, I guess my biggest question, and I know we've got later on in the program, we've got an issue. Proposal about maybe outsourcing our substitute teachers, and we'll get to that later. But
no, it's not outsourcing. It would be the same subs we already have.
But my question is, do we use just mainly one source?
No.
We've got a couple of temporary services that we use, and of course, we've had painters, we've had... And
what process do we go through to, I mean, do they have to go through any process to be chosen?
Well, we have them provide us with temporary employees, and based on the quality of the workers in terms of who it is that we were going to use in those particular roles. And we've been through a number of custodians, for example, so it's not as if we're using the same individuals. And part of this is testing the particular individuals out.
And also, if it's the pleasure of the board that we not use temp services, we don't have to, but then we would go at times with long periods of time with no one to do the work. Because that's where we kind of, like for example, in the summer, we'll bring in temps to help us with painting, because the one painter that we have can't do all the work across the district. So we have to pull in temps to do that temporary work for us because we don't have the manpower. In maintenance, we have, is it 6? Mr. 8. We only have 8, and that includes all of our electrical work. It includes all the work that we do in the facilities, all the maintenance comes from in grounds from that 8 people. So sometimes the 8 people just cannot manage. We'll also bring in temps sometimes when, for example, when we had to move the staff from the old Blenheim School to the new Blenheim School, we had to have help with that because we just don't have enough manpower.
Mr. Goff?
And I know, like Mr. Branch said, this is going to come up tonight, but currently, what are we doing to vet the temp services to make sure that they're providing us with people that are going to be background checked and so forth, that they're going to be working on our school grounds and that type thing? Is there any process in place to vet the temp services that are providing to us
Absolutely.
currently?
They provide us with those various reports, whether it's through SLED or through some some other type of clearing source to make certain that the individuals that are entering our facilities have had, proper clearance. Yes, sir.
Would this,
One more question, Ms. Onaja. Maybe we could look at compartmentalizing, this portion. I understand what you're talking about, but, to be able to identify actually what we're spending, because if it goes through sometimes and it's just going out as a vendor check or, whatever, just to compartmentalize it, the easier it is for us to look at an area, say who's working within that area, how much money we're spending, just anything we can do along those lines to help, to help make the process a little more clear.
Okay, very good.
Now, I've got one more thing I want to finish up with. I know last year we had someone came before the board and asked for us to use his services. Is this one of them that we're now using?
We are using, is it CMA is in one of the companies that's providing us with temporary custodians.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, we didn't, as a board, take action on that request.
We don't have a contract with them. It's a temp.
Okay.
It's not like we contracted with them to provide custodial services throughout our district. Now, if we had a contract with them, then that means they would take over the custodial services for our district. We don't have that. That would be outsourcing. We're not doing that.
Well, I realize that. I just want to make sure that we're giving other companies the same option that we're giving them.
Yes, sir.
I mean, not that I got it.
We've had other companies that we've used before we started using them as a temp service.
But we are using more than just them.
Yes.
So our temp services are temps, in essence.
along with that,
our temp services are temps. At the School of Discovery, what we did, and Mr. Jorgensen can speak to it as well, is when we started using this new temp service, we tried out the custodial staff, some of them down in School of Discovery, because we had a custodian to retire in December. And so we started using folks then. Sometimes it's hard to get staff in December, and you've got to have folks that can come in and have some knowledge of that equipment and stuff that they have to use, so we don't end up paying workman's comp.
Yeah, well, and I did share this with you when I talked with you. Not that I got anything against temp services, I just don't want to see anybody from our county lose the opportunity for a full-time job. If there's one available.
Right, and we definitely wouldn't want that. The bottom line is any positions that we have available, they will be advertised, and then the principal at those particular schools will interview the candidates and make a decision and a recommendation to HR regarding filling those positions. And matter of fact, the position that I think that you're concerned about, I think the principal, has the principal had interviews already? Not yet, but the principal has the applications. So the principal will, excuse me? Last week was the deadline for applications for the position that you shared with me.
Well,
and so,
not only that, I didn't realize that we were using them for like electrical and painting and things like that. But that's important for the board to know, because if some of these other areas need more workers, maybe that's something that we need to look at whenever the budget time comes.
Well, this is true, but the problem we've had, even when we had slots, we couldn't pay them.
Couldn't fill it either.
We can't. In other words, what they demand, like a plumber, we can't pay them. They don't want to come to work for the salaries that we can provide, because they can work in other private areas and make much more. So that's one of the problems we've had, and that's one of the reasons we started using temp services. We'll have people come and they'll be interested, and then when we tell them what the salary scale is, it's like, okay, I don't think so. So we've had that problem.
Mr. Roth, did you have another question? Ms. Flemming?
I think that in terms of, I know a few years back, 3 or 4 years, that when we're doing all the painting at the schools, I think we had, if I recall, a problem with one of the temps. So we aware that I was aware that we were using them, and I can't recall now what it was, but it was something that we had a pretty extensive session, in executive session, with this person that was painting, and so I was aware that we were using them, but whatever it was, we were able to solve it. But I know that Mr. Parks and Dr. Tillar and his staff, they will not, I would certainly hope they will not bring anyone that has not been vetted, because they have requirements from the state of South Carolina. And I trust that they would do what needs to be done. But even if a parent, if I went to a school as a visitor, I'm vetted, and as parents are too, so I'm sure anyone that's going to spend numerous hours and days working independently, they would be vetted.
Mr.
right.
Park, just one last question.
Ms.
on that.
Owenation?
I think my interest would be, I would trust the staff to choose good temp services, and I think we do need some of that, as explained. But I would like to know the cost in general. I don't want you to itemize every temp service at this point.
Sure.
But what are we spending for temp services?
Well,
that's in line with the jobs and the issues on that. The other thing
we
is...
typically spend about 35 to maybe 40% more, maybe a little more than 40% more than what the net amount of the wage is. And of course, with that, we're not having to pay Social Security tax, we're not having to pay workers' comp, we're not having to provide medical coverage. So those
which is a savings to us, but I'd still like to know what we're spending in the budget for that.
Okay, very good.
And also, I would be happy to know, and I know you're doing this just to re-emphasize, that we do want the folks in our county, as much as possible, to be in the running for any and all positions, including temporary positions. Now, there may not be temp services, you know, in the area that you need, but just want to emphasize that. I'd like to know, are we doing that?
We do, for example, in food service, we do it all the time.
Yeah.
That's one area that we, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that, and I agree with what Ms. Barbara is saying, industry all over this county, they use temp services all the time. And I think at one of our strategic planning meetings, and I may be incorrect, may not remember it correctly, but, and it says that, okay, if you hire a teacher, say $40,000 a year, that's what you hire for by the time, by the time you add all the fringe benefits, it's over $100,000. And that may not be exactly right, but it's a tremendous amount, because you got
costs are very
so
significant.
benefit costs, and those fringe benefits, holiday pay, and all of that, and so I do not personally. So many of my friends work in companies that employ temporary services, and it's a savings to the company, but it doesn't help the employees. But that's the way it is. And the school district, yes, it saves us money, but that's the way of the world. So,
Mr. Parks, could you send us a list of all of the temporaries, or whatever y'all want to call them, temporaries, partial employees, or whatever those services, and tell us how many of them are in the county and bring revenue to people in the county, and how many of them are out of the county?
We'll work on that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Goff, policy BEDD, could you elaborate on that? And BDE.
Okay. And just for clarification, and ideally I would like to do what Ms. Bright said and send out these policies in advance. This is just something that's been on my mind, as you know, we've had issues continually about the agenda, what's on the agenda. Just I think a lot of animosity seems to stem from that process. Our current policy says that to establish basic structure for board preparation of and adherence to its meetings, the superintendent, in coordination with the board chair, will prepare all agendas for meetings of the board. A board member, staff member, or citizen of the district may suggest items of business. The inclusion of such items will be at the discretion of the superintendent and the board chair. Agenda items must be sent to the superintendent 1 week in advance of the regular monthly meeting. The 5 days, we'll speak about that on here at the end of it. That actually refers to when we, as board members, are supposed to get information. It says the board will follow the order of business set by the agenda unless the order is altered by a majority vote of members present, which we did tonight. Items of business not on agenda may be discussed and acted upon if a majority of the board agrees to consider them. The agenda, together with supporting materials, will be distributed to board members at least 5 days in advance of the meeting, if at all possible. This will allow board members to give items of business careful consideration. The agenda will be made available to the press and to others upon request. And I think we hopefully send that to them regardless. So, my suggestion, and we'll be happy to allow others to entertain. Well, let me look at policy BDE, which is for board committees. And as current, it says there will be no standing committees of the board. The board believes that it operates most effectively without committees. Board members will receive the same information, explore options, and make decisions together, which would all happen in a perfect world. The chairman may appoint special committees when the need arises. The function of special committees will be fact-finding, deliberative, and advisory, but never legislative or administrative. Such committees will serve until they have accomplished their purpose and/or until they are discharged. All committee meetings will be open to the public. All committees will make reasonable and timely efforts to give notice of their meetings in accordance with the applicable provisions of the South Carolina Information Act as amended. What I would like to present would be one that we modify our policy, policy BDE, that would allow the board chairperson to appoint a committee of board members to meet once monthly for the purpose of drafting the agenda for the upcoming meeting. If one of those members is unable to attend, the board chair would be allowed to appoint a replacement. That will be the first. That's accomplished. My recommendation would be that the committee appointed by the board will meet at least 1 week prior to the scheduled board meetings to draft the agenda for the upcoming board meeting. Items to be included should be presented to the committee at this time. So staff, board members, citizens, anyone who has items to present would present them to the board, to the agenda committee. They would determine the layout of the meeting. That information would then be transferred to the district office to, the superintendent naturally would be in attendance in these meetings. But from there, we would be able to, one, have a more inclusive process of board members to come to the, to be a part of the agenda process. It's going to take place at least a week in advance, so there's going to be no surprises. If it needs to be 10 days, if it needs to be 2 weeks, then be more than happy to, I think that's adjustable. But again, to eliminate some of the issues we're having, I think, a diverse committee of the board to meet, discuss recommendations, and then approve the agenda. That agenda will then in turn be drafted and sent out to all of the board members, including any information.
Mr. Goff, I'd just like to thank you. I think that's an excellent idea, and I welcome that. The only problem that I do see is that time frame. Normally, we would need to meet at least 2 weeks prior to the board meeting, because it takes the staff some time for us to pull items and then for Ms. Tweed to put the packet together, then get it out to everyone. So if we could do it 2 weeks prior to a board meeting, it would be better.
Would that be comfortable for you? Would you be able to have the information that the staff and so forth is going to be presented? Would it be available 2 weeks out? Because I know sometimes you have things that come up.
What I mean, if for example, usually if there are some things that we know that we need to bring before the board, we usually know that at least a week or so after the board meeting. So I think that will be fine, long as we know what the items are. Once the committee determines the items, then it would give us an extra week to get it ready, then get it to the board, so the board would have it 5 days prior to the meeting
Can you
to
have
review.
your part ready 2 weeks ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And what I mean when I say we can have it ready, we will be able to present the items at that time.
All right.
Did you?
Mr. Coachman?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Did I hear you say that the board chair and the superintendent would choose this committee?
No, the board chair.
Just the board chair?
Well, the board chair, I mean, just like any other committee, I mean, the board chair is just going to oversee. I mean, we've got board members. I mean, I work, don't have a lot of time in the afternoons to be available for it. So I just think to include more people, because the reality is this kind of had started happening just a little bit because there were some underlying issues and things of that nature. So, in light of having people, just showing up, this is going to include everybody. This will work towards our goal of what we're talking about, being a more inclusive board, working together. And this will allow, this committee to make some decisions about the things that are going on the agenda, the way that they're going to be presented. Could be some time-saving type things that could be offered up, and may be able to iron out some of the issues so that we don't get to the meetings and have problems when we come up here because of lack of information or perceived lack of information. So it's just, to me, it's just, I think it's something that'll help resolve some of the tension and the issues that we've been having in relation to that. And I'd entertain anybody else's input if y'all have some ideas.
Anyone?
No, I do have some, I just have some concern. We do have a policy that we don't have standing committees. And the reason for that is extensive, and it's throughout the state. We know we've had problems in coming up with an agenda. The 7-day things, I would love that. I just think 2 weeks is going to be a problem. That's just my personal opinion, that to prepare for the meeting. I don't know that we can do that. We may be able to do most of it. I think it's cumbersome. We ought to be able to trust our superintendent and our chairman to take information from us and put it on the agenda.
Exactly.
This is not a difficult problem. It has been made difficult, or for whatever reasons. But if it would help to have someone else appointed by the board in there to equalize that. But I think this board is being very clear that we want to work together and that we would like our chairman and superintendent to be able to work together. Before we make a permanent change, maybe we should do a trial period and see what happens in terms of the committee situation. I'm just throwing it out because I'm just dealing with this tonight. I haven't had a chance to think about it fully. But, too many cooks in the kitchen can spoil the
It works well for other forms of government in the county, and they don't seem to have an issue with it. And like I said, I think it'll help to clear the water some, so we don't come into the meeting.
I'm trying really hard to recognize Mr. Driggers.
They're within a minute.
Okay.
Again, Mr. Woods and ourselves, we're new to the board. I have served on it once before. And it seems like to me the simplest thing to do, and this is just, again, Danny's opinion, we've talked about putting things on the agenda tonight for April. We've talked about meeting and having boards, members meeting. The simplest thing I thought what to do was if you have something you want to put on the agenda, you present it to the chairman or the superintendent, whichever is your preference. The chairman and the superintendent, they get together, they go and they put the agenda together, they make sure that every one of us don't have something on there. If that does, that's too long of a meeting.
Right, and we break it up.
But they distinguish what is the most important, put it on there, send it out to us, and then we have time to go over it. I mean, it's just a chain of command. It's the way things work. I mean, am I missing something somewhere here?
Yes, sir, Mr. Driggers, you're missing something.
Okay, what am I missing?
What you're missing is the fact that when Ms. Parsons came on the board 4 years ago now, we did start out meeting together, just the two of us, and reviewing the agenda. It's when we came into a public meeting and she started to call me a liar in the meetings is when I felt like I needed either my staff or another board member in the meetings. And I still feel that way.
Record it like we do the meeting here. Don't we record the meeting here? Mm-hmm. Record it.
Good idea.
I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate or hard to get along with, but all I'm trying to say is, and I know a lot of things have happened for a guy on this board. I'm most interested in moving this board from this point forward, not what happened behind me.
And I understand, and so am I, Mr. Driggers, but to be very honest, I really think that we need to have a committee or more people to come so that the board can be on the same page with one another. It's hard being in my position when I have some board members calling me and saying, why is this on the agenda? I didn't know anything about this. And I'm thinking, well, I had other people to tell me to put that on there. That's the problem with individual items from the board. This is the only district that I've ever worked in that do that. They don't do that. The board comes together and decide what items they want to have on the agenda. The only items that the superintendent is going to place on the agenda are those things that we need to share for information, or we need a vote on, or we need to, for example, if there's some type of legal change or whatever, we bring those things. But whatever the pleasure of the board is, that's what I'll do. But I do think that I would be more comfortable with a committee. That way everyone can stay informed. One thing that I'd like to mention this evening to the board is 3 years ago, we went through the advanced ed accreditation process. And when we went through the advanced ed accreditation process, there were 5 recommendations. 4 of them dealt with the board. And 4 of them dealt with the board getting along, making sure that the board receives training, making sure that the board is concentrating on school business, what's best for children, no individual agendas. So I think if the board comes together to work on pulling that agenda together, along with the superintendent, then we can alleviate that. Because we have another year or so, and advanced ed is going to come back, and they're going to see if there's been improvements or not. And if there's not been improvements regarding the way we operate, then they're going to take actions. So I think we need to keep that in mind, and I think there's no secrets. We're all responsible. And it doesn't matter, but I think more members need to be in the meeting.
Would someone please make a motion along the lines of telling the board chair to appoint a committee for, say, 3 months? And that's not a standing committee, that just takes care of the job for 3 months. Could we do that?
Madam Chair, I move that we move forward with with authorizing the chairperson to appoint a temporary committee for the purpose of meeting and establishing board meeting agendas, with that meeting to take place ideally 2 weeks in advance of the meetings, and at a minimum 10 days.
Did you, what you say? I missed what part of what you said because she was busy seconding.
2 weeks in advance.
2 weeks in advance. So that would be the Monday, 2 Mondays ahead of the board meeting.
And I would say, 2 weeks being the preference. 10 days, I think, would be the far end of it. So that way, there's time to prepare information to get that out, so that the board members receive their information 5 days prior to the meeting.
We need to have a set time for that many people to meet.
We can't have a quorum. It has to be 4 members. So, that would be up to you, but I mean, if we can go ahead and start it with 2 weeks prior.
On the Monday, 2 Mondays before the regular board meeting.
Correct.
All right?
Could you go ahead and appoint the members of that committee now?
Beg your pardon?
Can you appoint the other 2 members of that committee now?
Yes, I am.
What time of day are we talking?
Will 6 o'clock work? All right, so it's 6 o'clock at the district office, 2 Mondays prior to whatever day the regular board meeting is on, even though sometimes we meet Mondays, sometimes we meet
Whatever.
It'll be 2 weeks prior to
odd
the
week.
regular scheduled meeting.
All right, and I'm going to appoint Mr. Branch, the vice chair, Ms. Owenation, and Ms. Bright. You can do it? All right. All right. And so now we have a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Y'all don't want to vote for this?
My only concern about that time is oftentimes, my staff is not going to be there at 6 o'clock.
All right, pick another
And
time.
so I just think it would be better if we could do it during the day, if the
That's
board
why
can
maybe
give
some
me a
people that are
time.
available that can meet at 3 or 4 o'clock in
Can we
the
at
afternoon.
4?
I can't.
I don't think Janice can either.
No, people that work a regular scheduled job can't do that.
Okay, we'll do it at 6.
Well, I mean, why can't, I mean, we
Try
could,
it at 6
I
o'clock.
mean, do we have members who would be available to meet at a more convenient time?
I'm available anytime during the day.
Me too.
All right, Ms. Bright?
I mean, if it's more convenient to do it in the daytime and pick one of the this is fine with me. But if it's the afternoon, I can do it. I can't do it in the daytime.
All right, Mr. Branch, you can do it? Well, let's just postpone
Why don't we
this
try the
discussion.
6? Why don't we try the 6 o'clock? If she needs staff and we need to deal with that, we'll find that out. Fair. And I hate to make a long day for her too.
I'll pick an alternate.
For example, just like this coming Monday, I know I have a meeting in Columbia, and I know I won't be here. So that's the reason I said that might not be a good time for us to.
Have we approved the motion yet for picking?
No. I've asked people to vote, and nobody raised their
I'll
hands.
just check it. Go ahead.
So, all in favor of having a committee at 6 o'clock, 2 weeks prior to the regular board meeting, to meet at the district office at 6 o'clock, please raise your right hand. All right, so it's Ms. Owenation, Mr. Woods, Mr. Goff, me. Are you in favor or not? Okay. Ms. Bright and Mr. Branch. So the motion's carried. All opposed? Okay. Ms. Flemming, which way are you going?
Abstaining.
Ms. Flemming is abstaining.
Abstaining.
All right.
Abstentions, fine, like it is.
All right. And Ms. Bright, I ask you again, can you do it?
If it's in the evening, yes.
Yes, at 6 o'clock. All right, Mr. Branch, Ms. Owenation,
Yes.
all
It
right?
would have to be the evening for me.
Yep,
It'd be very
and-
difficult for me to do it.
And Ms.
during the
Bright.
day.
And then we can always change the time at a later time.
I say we have an alternate.
All right, what we'll have to do when we do an alternate is just figure out who can do it at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about Ms.
Because Mr. Coachman, very often you have to go to work.
No, I work. I don't have to work at 11 o'clock at night.
Okay.
I'm up all day. I'm free.
All right, so we'll work on the alternate issue later. All right. Beg your pardon?
Can we do it on the 16th? I'm trying to
The
get it on my
16th
schedule.
of March, so that'll be the first meeting. 3/16.
No, it's on the 23rd.
Now, I think we should, and this is not in the motion, okay? But
Right.
if, for example, my problem is having that many people meet anytime, on a regular basis. That's always a problem. If not all members of the committee can be there, I think we should authorize the committee to go ahead and proceed as much as they can.
Okay.
If she's working, or he's working, or I'm working, we can't be there. I think they should meet as a committee, but go ahead and do the
And
agenda.
do it regardless. Okay, all right. So, now, March the 16th at 6 o'clock at the district office. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
I understand there's already a whole meeting scheduled for that time.
Okay.
That's an important meeting. It starts at 6, does it not?
5
We can
o'clock?
still do it at that time. as well.
Can you?
Okay, you can't come at 5 o'clock.
But we can still do it that night.
Okay.
We realize that Ms. spring break and other things come in.
The rest of us can't come at 5.
Well, why don't we try it a week ahead the first time and then
Let's do a week ahead. What's the date of
You don't
that?
think that's enough time?
If we do a week ahead, we can't get you the information a week
Well,
ahead.
how have you been handling that to date? Because that's how we've been, I don't mean to be impertinent, but that's the way we've been handling it, meeting a week ahead.
But what we do is when we get those items at the 13th hour, my staff and I, we're scrambling around to get it done.
All right.
So, and so we need to do it on the 16th, reason being the next week, the board will be at that meeting in Dillon.
After she can't come at 5 o'clock. Let's do it after the meeting.
Can you come at 5 o'clock?
Anytime, anytime.
Well, let's
You choose another date beside me. I ain't gonna be there, but we'll see.
We could do Wednesday.
The 18th.
Okay. Wednesday, the 18th, at 6 o'clock at the district office. Does that suit everyone?
Let me get something straight on that, Madam Chair. Was I chosen as an alternate or just stand by? Or if she can't show up, will I be able to attend the agenda meeting?
Anybody can attend.
Okay. But as far as input on the agenda, if I'm an alternate and she's not there.
If you come extra, then you can't participate.
Man, I don't need to come extra. The extra doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, am I an alternate? Have I been chosen for an alternate?
Not yet.
Okay, we're gonna vote on that. That's the only thing I just need to know is my role. If it's gonna be a role or not, that's all.
It seems so simple.
Is the 18th all right with everyone?
Yeah, the 18th is fine.
Okay. Is that all right with you? All right. Zoe Nation?
I don't know. I'll have to check my, I'm sorry. I think it will be, but I don't know.
All right.
So,
Correct. Ms. Bright, Ms. Owenation, Mr. Branch, and me.
okay.
And Dr. Tillar.
Because if
Well, she was asking what board members.
Oh, did she? I thought she said who.
No,
Okay.
so when are you going to choose the alternate?
if somebody can't come.
So if I can't, if for some reason I can't make it on the 18th, then you're going to start calling people and asking them to come?
Right. Right. Because otherwise, we'll end up with the alternate coming each time. You know, this doesn't need to be that confusing, everybody. It's not going to.
Well, I think that if I can't come, I should just call.
Robert, I wish it would work like
Way ahead, yeah.
And call Mike and say,
All right. Well,
I didn't say that. Y'all are trying to read words into my mouth. If you can't come, or if anybody can't come, would you call me? Right.
yeah.
Okay? All right. Can we move on? All right.
I think you need to choose the alternate. I'm serious. I'm sorry.
Folks, we've got a lot to do here.
Do we need an alternate? Do we need to choose an alternate tonight? Then it's not her decision to make.
They're asking over here, Ms. Brooks.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Do we need an alternate tonight? Do we need to choose that alternate now so the person
If
will know?
everyone can come,
No, ma'am, no, it's, you need to have a person, I think that needs to be named tonight. I would like to see that done tonight. I think
That's all I've been asking.
somebody make a motion.
I don't have
We got stuff to do. Good. Is there a second? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Ms. Owenation, please keep your hands up long enough for me to... Ms. Owenation, Mr. Woods, Mr. Goff, Mr. Coachman, Mr. Branch, Ms. Bright.
It's unanimous.
Holy cow, Ms. Flemming voted. And Mr. Driggers. All right, the motion's carried. Yes.
Have we voted on the motion yet? I can't remember.
All right.
Did we vote on the regular, did we vote on the motion?
A good motion.
We've already voted on the motion.
Okay. Okay, that's right.
I'll tell you, this is a very tedious meeting here, and it doesn't need to be. All right, under curriculum instruction and assessment, Ms. Battle, applied science courses, and we need a vote. All of this happened simply because we put items on here for information. And I'm going to postpone the 2 items that I put on to save time. We'll put it on the next meeting's agenda.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Battle.
Very quickly, you received the information. What it is that the applied courses are being phased out at the state, but individual school districts still have the option of offering them for science credit as long as they have approval from their school board and then they get approval from the State Department. The reason we need to continue to offer these courses is that they are the courses that are needed for manufacturing and technology because they are real-world based. So I'm asking for your approval for us as a school district to continue to offer these courses for science credit.
Madam Chairman, I move that we authorize the continued offering of these courses that are listed: Applied Biology 1, Applied Biology 2, Chemistry for the Technologies, Physics for the Technologies 1, and Physics for the Technologies 2 as part of our curriculum.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Ms. Flemming, did you vote? All right, yes, it's unanimous. Thank you very much.